All right, so hopefully you watched and saw how the little girl was regulating before, during, and after um, her response, her ski jump. And so you can see beforehand how she is really self determined. She's got goals. And then during, she is kind of, it goes really fast, but she's like feeling what emotions are going through her body. And then afterwards, you can see how she evaluates her performance, and it's a really good example of just this process. And so this is just more about how people truly do self regulate. And I do want to highlight this appropriate help seeking is important to encourage in our students. Not an over reliance on help, but just enough. So, how are we encouraging our students to ask for support as well? Because we can't always know what they're struggling with. And so, self regulated learners just perform, they tend to perform at higher proficiency levels. They set more ambitious goals. They are learning more effectively. They are achieving at higher levels. And so, um, and adolescents, especially the population that you're working with, many of their learning activities are complex, they're long term, they may occur in isolation or individual. And so it requires this extreme amount of self direction. And I think we can see even in ourselves how we struggle with this. So expecting adolescent children to be doing this is hard. So, how are we as teachers helping them? Here's some solid strategies for you. So, at least now that we're online, you can pause it and write down things and screenshot things. So, that's cool. But teach those strategies just like we taught those cognitive strategies. Teach them to monitor and to question themselves. Encourage students to set their own goals and to engage in productive monitoring of those goals. Um, Promote student independence with that scaffolding is important as well. So not too much reliance on the teacher. Promote that individual independence, and that including assignments with choice. A lot of you have talked about doing this in your classroom. So how are you providing students with that choice so they are more motivated and they feel more efficacious in their products? Those time management techniques, we may need some help with them ourselves right now. So we need to be teaching them to our students and first figuring out how do we time manage and then teaching them. Those check-in and those checklist tools, social emotional learning supports, all of those things that we kind of talked about during this lesson, those holistic learning things. And how are you modeling? So just like I kind of talked you through how I modeled for my students how I self-regulate, and how are we helping them to see that? You have to explicitly sometimes tell them, I'm modeling this because blah blah blah. And that helps seeking behavior, but not too much. And then that reflective process of encouraging self-assessment. So these are all beautiful strategies for you to hold on to for your classroom, and I hope that you do. And all of these are really useful for us right now as we're engaging in long stretches of time where we need to be self-regulated. We need to have those goals. We need to ask for help when we need. So this kind of works with our current circumstances too. And so increasing student responsibility in the learning process. So less of you, more of the student. And we'll talk about this when we go into instruction, but direct instruction and modeling kind of comes first, and then you go into that guide. And then eventually you can step back and kind of allow for that really authentic student directed learning. But you need to see where your students are in the process before you just relinquish all of your support. You can kind of think about it. Do I need to be a leader for my students right now? Do I need to be a guide for my students, or do I simply need to support them in reflecting on their own learning process? So there were times when my students needed me to be a leader. They needed direct and explicit instruction for a lesson. But sometimes I had students who really only needed me as support for reflection, like how did you do that feedback piece. So sometimes I would keep like 15 of my students and I would tell 5 of them to literally go in the hall and to do the assignment in that peer group or individual because they didn't need me. So you need to ask yourself, like, where are my students right now? That's that formative assessment that we'll go into more, but we've talked about formative assessment. So how do you know where your students are? This goes into behavior and academics. And you have this PowerPoint. I know I'm blocking the screen, but just so you can see everything, you can pause the screen if you need. Okay. And so this is another visual for those of you who ask for like more visual learning. Just another way to see this whole self-regulation process. You can pause and look at that. So this is going to be our group activity, and I think I've taken up about an hour of your time. So I definitely don't want to go over. But basically, what I did make a discussion post, but not in the way that I tend to hate them. You don't have to respond to anyone unless you want to respond. So basically, I have 3 real scenarios, things that you might encounter in a classroom. And so I want you to pick one of the scenarios that you want to work with. And then what you'll do is identify the challenges that you face as a teacher or the students facing. And then I want you to apply social cognitive theory. So all of these things that we've talked about, cognition, the environment, and what was the final one? Look at me brain farting right now. And behavior, obviously. And so you're applying social cognitive theory, that's actually a good review for us, to the scenario. And also thinking about modeling, self-efficacy, teacher self-efficacy, and self-regulation. And so you're going to apply some of these things to the situation. And then also, if you can, add some aspects of behaviorism from last class and information processing even, because they all do come together. And then you're just going to kind of post to the discussion board. So you can type it up like a paragraph. You can type it up with bullet points so that you're hitting each of these things. You can make a little PowerPoint presentation if you want. You can do it in a voice memo and upload your voice memo on your phone. I don't care how you do it. I just want you to think about applying this to a real scenario. And so here, you can pause these, but they're also in the PowerPoint. So you're going to pick number 1, number 2, or number 3. You can pause those and apply social cognitive theory. And I'm just asking that you post a response by the end of this week's learning. So by the end of Sunday, let's see here, the 29th. So that we'll be moving on after that anyway. So try to do it by then. And then this is our wrap up. And I think there's one more question for you in the Nearpod, just thinking about, what is Sprite? Just thinking about which theory do you align with the most? And maybe it's a mix of frameworks, theoretical frameworks, and why. So which one really caught your fancy, or which aspects of each one do you really resonate with? And just kind of jotting down your thoughts in the Nearpod. And just your take-home message, so teachers can provide a level of environmental control in the classroom that affords students the opportunity to productively learn. And so really, ultimately, it's up to you to create that classroom environment. Oh, I miss your name cards. Your Nearpod is like the new name card. So anyway, go ahead, finish the Nearpod so that I can see your responses. Jot down your thoughts on the discussion post, and I will see you for our next class on motivation. So I will see you all. Sorry, I'm moving the screen. I'll see you all later. I hope you have a wonderful couple days, and I hope you're all doing well. Please reach out if you need me, and let me know if this is working, the Nearpod, or if it's not working. I'll make modifications. Okay, bye-bye.